Woohoo! Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9 The News and Talk Bloomington Normal. Brr, it's so cold, but we've got hot news for you. So I'm going to jump right in. Actually, I didn't get to this story yesterday, but I'm still peeved off about it. So I wanted to bring it to you early this morning. This alleged presidential historian, a liberal, she wants to cancel President's Day. Now, a couple of days ago was President's Day, and as we talked about yesterday, President's Day kind of falls smack dab in between George Washington's birthday and Abraham Lincoln's birthday. And really, it's just a day to acknowledge those presidents' accomplishments. Now, over the years, because of the name President's Day, we all kind of acknowledge the accomplishments of many presidents. And this woman, she wants to cancel President's Day because, come on, lady, we know that you have TDS. It's because of cough, cough, Donald Trump. She wants to cancel President's Day because people were saying, hey, he's had a lot of accomplishments, and they've acknowledged President Donald Trump's accomplishments on, this year, 2025, this President's Day, because he's the sitting president. So people were acknowledging his accomplishments on President's Day, and she was upset. So we're going to get to that. Texas church. This is trigger warning. Very, very disturbing. This Texas church had invited this drag queen to perform, and he got up there and he started threatening to sacrifice, yes, living sacrifice, like killing people on the altar, Trump supporters. Don't believe me. I've got the clip. We've got the evidence. We've got the receipts. So I'm going to play that here. It was a Texas church who invited this drag queen to perform. Then we're going to get to this Antifa hooligan, this little goon. He vandalized this Tesla, but this is a shocking twist here, but not so shocking because it's always funny when the left eats their own. The car belonged to an anti-Elon Musk leftist who was sympathetic to Antifa. So it was a leftist car, Tesla, and then this Antifa hooligan wrote the word Nazi on the hood. So we're going to get to that because I just think it's hilarious when the left accidentally or even purposefully eats their own. So I'm going to be right back with all of that. But first, I want to get to this video of this woman. Let me see if I've got the right video. Yep, this is the historian, where she is calling for President's Day to be canceled. So let's take a listen here.
Presidential historian says President's Day is ridiculous. We should scrap it. What do you mean?
It is a little bit silly. I mean, we have had some real duds, so I'm not sure we really want to be celebrating all presidents. And the tradition actually comes from celebrating birthdays, which is a celebration that we inherited from celebrating the king. And I'm just not sure that that's exactly what we want. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that we necessarily want to celebrate the people. I think that we want to have a certain respect for the office. I totally get that. And some have done extraordinary things, but by celebrating all of them, I do think it causes us to think of the president as somehow other, when in reality they are a citizen just like everyone else.
So you mentioned this earlier in the show, the idea that Trump posted something just over the weekend where he quoted Napoleon Bonaparte-esque, saying, "He who saves his country does not violate any law." It feels like exactly the example of what you're saying we should push against.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, I think if we think of a president as someone to celebrate just because they exist, which is what the king was, and that's why they celebrated the king's birthday, then you it does evolve into that argument that they can do no wrong.
Wow. Okay. Firstly, like I said, this has historically been a holiday centered around George Washington, Abraham Lincoln. I wonder what this presidential historian would say about the entire state of Illinois practically being a shrine to Abraham Lincoln. He was just a citizen like everybody else. So, I mean, should we scrap the calling ourselves the land of Lincoln? Should we remove Abraham Lincoln from our driver's license or our license plates? Come on. Historically, this holiday has had nothing to do with Donald Trump, but because these people have TDS and they despise the current president so much that they decided that this holiday may or may not be used to celebrate his accomplishments, and that can't be possible, and that's an evil thing, and it should be banned forever because, God forbid, we acknowledge the accomplishments of our sitting president. So according to the Post Millennial, we've got this host here. You heard her, the MSNBC host. It's the Way Too Early show. I don't know. I've never really watched MSNBC. I have watched CNN because they force you to watch it when you're in the airports and in the gyms. But this MSNBC host, Ali Vitali, she asked this so-called presidential historian, Lindsay Chervinsky, if she wanted to completely scrap the holiday, which Chervinsky responded, it is a little bit silly. Quote, I mean, we have had some real duds, so I'm not really sure we want to be celebrating all presidents. She added, quote, and the tradition actually comes from celebrating birthdays, which, I mean, it kind of does. It happens to be smack dab in the middle of George Washington's birthday and Abraham Lincoln's birthday. But she goes on here, which is a celebration that we inherited from celebrating the king. And I'm not sure that's exactly what we want. Okay, the fact that she tried to correlate this is this as if it's nothing more than Americans celebrating presidents like kings is disingenuous. Okay, she tried to equate President's Day to the way we used to celebrate kings' birthdays. And that's just totally disingenuous. And she didn't really make much of a point there to make that correlation. It happens to be smack dab in the middle of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln's birthday, but we don't really celebrate. We recognize and acknowledge the accomplishments of these presidents. But back then, you know, you had to bring gifts to the castle. You had to, you know, actually celebrate the king's birthday. Okay, maybe bring him a big old birthday cake or something like that. And that's not what we do. Okay, we acknowledge the accomplishments, and some people, not even all people, have the day off. Okay, and they observe the holiday. It's just an excuse to have a day off. Okay, so the historian who said that she was disappointed in the 2024 election outcome added this. She says, quote, I think we want to have a certain respect for the office, but celebrating all of them, she goes, I totally get that we have to have a certain respect. And some have done extraordinary things. But celebrating all of them, I do think it causes us to think that the president is somehow other, when in reality, they're a citizen just like everybody else. Don't you love how she uses the word reality? And when these people live in progressive la la land, okay, nobody really gives a darn or a hoot about President's Day. Nobody really cares, okay? She's the only one talking about canceling it. Nobody else really cares. The only reason why she's talking about canceling it is because she has severe TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. So, I don't know if she thinks we're as dumb as she is. We all know what President's Day is used for and what the historical meaning of President's Day is. But because by the way she's talking, it's implied. That's implied where she thinks you're as dumb as she is, and she's talking down to you. You can hear it in her voice. She's condescending. Americans know that presidents have done bad things, okay, including Democrats, Republicans as well. George Bush, I can name several Republican presidents. I'll even say it, Abraham Lincoln. Ultimately, I think the greater good, it was justified here, but he acted unconstitutionally. Okay, so, I mean, there were things that I didn't like that Abraham Lincoln did for the greater good, of course. Ending slavery is a good thing. But there were things that Abe Lincoln did. There were things, the corn subsidies. That's why a lot of Americans are unhealthy today. I know people are going to be losing their minds because they said that I don't like some of the things Ronald Reagan has done or did, where he, subsidized corn. It caused, companies to have these corn, the big corn and big farming, big agriculture. They decided to put corn in everything because of the corn subsidies. So I've got my I've got my rub here with Ronald Reagan. A few things. So you can point out bad things that presidents did all day long. Even Democrats, you can point out. I can point out. I like JFK. I liked, some of the things he did. I didn't like some of the things he did, but for the most part, I think that he was a populist president who wouldn't be goaded into war, and he was ultimately killed for that. It doesn't mean that people believe we're uplifting presidents as kings just because we acknowledge some of the accomplishments of presidents on one day of the year. Okay, it doesn't mean we're uplifting them as kings. It means that we respect our government and our leadership enough to acknowledge some of the accomplishments and maybe even talk about some of the bad things presidents have done in years past. Okay, so Travinsky, now this is how you know she's an anti-Trumper, this woman. She says, the outcome was unexpected. The 2024 election outcome was unexpected and not what I wanted. This is what she posted right after the 2024 election. She goes, I was originally registered as a Republican, as a pro-democracy voter. Well, I know you're not a Republican because Republicans believe that we live in a constitutional republic because we do. So when you say you're a pro-democracy voter, we have a democratic process in how we vote, but it's a constitutional republic. So I'm a constitutional republic voter who happens to engage in a democratic process. Okay. So no, you're not a Republican. Okay. By the very definition of a Republican, you believe in a constitutional republic. But anyway, so she later added in the post that she spent multiple days grieving that Trump won. Goodness, these people, I don't even know if they can't even come up with a good argument. Okay. Because we can always go back and see the true reason why she wants to cancel President's Day. It's because she's grieving over the fact that President Donald Trump was elected. Okay. And they rely on these vague generalities for the most naive voters and for the most naive people, saying, oh, President's Day is correlated or equates to celebrating kings and that tradition of celebrating kings' birthdays. So they come up with this general, vague generality, and they think that that's going to fly and it might for some of the most naive people of the population, but for most people, we're not as dumb as you, lady. And we know that nobody really cares. Nobody's been talking about President's Day and getting rid of it. And you're like one of the only ones, and you're on NBC, you're a clown. So that being said, the truth hurts. Donald Trump is still your president, lady. And whether you want to celebrate that or not, that's up to you. But you can't deny that this guy has had accomplishment after accomplishment after accomplishment in this very short time in office. I would say the main things, he's done so much, but the main things that I really like are the negotiations he worked out with Canada and Mexico and got them to patrol their own border, and they did it at their expense. Okay, that's a huge win for America. So he's done a lot of great things, and I'll say it. I'm recognizing his accomplishments on President's Day, which was a couple days ago. But I wanted to bring that to you guys. I was thinking about it all day yesterday, and I was like, oh, I'm just so angry at this woman. I have to bring it to you. So next, we are going to be talking about this Texas church. They mocked Christianity. They held a drag king's sermon. That's what they called it. They invited this drag queen to perform, essentially. And this drag queen also happened to be calling for the sacrifices, yes, killings of Trump supporters at this performance. So I'll be right back with that. Hey, good morning. So do appreciate you tuning in. Just don't have it be a federal paid holiday. Yeah, I mean, whatever, a federal paid holiday. I really don't think that a whole lot of people take the day off anyway. Most people have to go to work on President's Day. Cities 92.9 do for President's Day. What did Cities 92 do for President's Day? Like, what do you mean? I don't know what you mean. Nobody took the day off, if that's what you mean. Most people don't take the day off for President's Day, by the way. So I don't know if it's a federal paid holiday. I'd have to look that up. If it's a federally paid holiday, okay, you could make the argument that we have too many federally paid holidays. Teachers have it off mostly. So yeah, I would imagine that it's a federal paid holiday, but I actually don't even know because guess what? I barely even knew that it was President's Day. I'm going to be honest with you on Monday. That's how insignificant really the holiday is. But I don't think that we should scrap it all together. I mean, I think it's a time to recognize the accomplishments and observe the holiday as a time to recognize the accomplishments and even And this is just part of the leftists' behavior where they erase history. So they don't want you talking about history, okay? And this is, I actually think it's good that she, is out here talking about it on MSNBC, because, we can have a conversation about the intention of President's Day, and every year we talk about great presidents and pretty crappy ones, okay? And this is a chance to talk about our nation's history and the nation's leadership in years past. So I think it's a great holiday. I think that a lot of people don't really celebrate it or observe it because they honestly forget about it, because guess what? We all have lives. Let me look this up. Is a federal holiday. So yeah, it's a federal holiday, meaning the federal get the day off. Yeah, but most private sector workers are not guaranteed time off. Yeah, like everything else. Federal holidays, it's just a time for government workers to, punch out. Okay. Meanwhile, us private sector workers have to go to work like everybody else. So yeah, it's just another paid like holiday for government workers. Okay, so she's out there saying that we should scrap the holiday. Okay, that's probably not going to go over with your liberal teachers very well. Little Miss presidential historian. Is mattress sale time. Yeah. And that's what we've done with a lot of holidays. We've just kind of like commercialized them. But I think if you were to actually, use the holiday, and really it's a shame because the one place that we should be having these conversations would probably be our education institutions, so our school districts, but all the kids have school off that day. So really the intention here for President's Day should be to talk about the history, not even, celebrate the accomplishments, recognize the accomplishments, but also have a conversation about the bad that presidents have done. So um, I think that it would be a great opportunity for kids to learn about prior presidents. Unfortunately, the teachers in the public indoctrination camps have that day off, and they can't teach kids about the history of our nation and the history of our leadership because they have the day off. So the one place where we should probably be having these conversations, they close it up, and we can't have those conversations. So yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I really don't care either way, because every day you could talk about, presidents, what ones were good, what ones were bad, and we should be teaching that in schools. But the one place where we should probably be having a conversation around this time of year, President's Day, would be our schools. But unfortunately, they're closed up, and the teachers are getting paid to, be home with your tax dollars, by the way. So yeah, President's birthday day was originally for Washington and Lincoln. Then it was combined to President's Day. Yeah. So historically, we've only celebrated the major accomplishments of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. And then over the years, because of the name President's Day, people have talked about other presidents on President's Day. I think that we have too many federal holidays, too many opportunities for government workers to take the day off, whereas, the private sector counterpart here is out there working. Okay. You've got the public sector, having the day off, whereas, like I said, they are the only ones who probably shouldn't be taking the day off, because the schools should be the place where we're talking about presidents, their accomplishments, and yeah, it's unfortunate. So we're going to talk about this drag queen next, Kamala Harris. Even if voting for her was the morally superior thing to do, which leftists will tell you that's the morally superior thing to do, I don't think a church, any kind of church, should be advocating for violence against anyone. I also don't think that they should be mocking people because of their disabilities, which is exactly what this drag queen did at this Texas church. So we're going to get to that. There's so much that I got to get to this morning. So smash that like button, share this out with your friends. We're going to be right back in just a second. Wow. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. Find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. You guys can also let me know if you want to advertise. Go ahead, send me a message if you want to sponsor this program. You can email me at cat@gpmbloomington.com, or you can text me at 309-451-9299. That text line is open and available to you. If you're a business owner, every morning we've got lefties, we've got people on the right, we've got conservatives listening to the program. So this is the place to be if you want to reach consumers of all kind. So go ahead and shoot me a text. I did want to talk about this drag queen at this Texas church. Okay, so even if you think Kamala Harris, voting for her was the morally superior thing to do, which it is not, by the way, a church should never be advocating for violence against anyone who disagrees with them. Okay, a church, very specifically here, I'm talking about a church. They should also not mock people who have disabilities. The church, okay. One Texas church took this opportunity to invite a drag queen, and they held what was called a drag king sermon. That's what they called it. And I'm just going to play this here for you. Take a listen. Here we go.
By the way, if any of y'all voted for Trump, please don't tell us. No, don't tell us. Or do, and do y'all sacrifice? Do y'all do that? Did we start? He voted for Trump?
No, I said the church is safe.
Okay, because I will kill him. I went down to Austin like a year and a half ago with some other drag queens to, fist fight Greg Abbott, but he wouldn't stand up and fight me. And I'll be honest, I think the easiest thing that we can do with the money that we raise is just take away those wheelchair ramps and just not let him have access to the floor. By the way, if any of y'all...
Wow. So this individual, it's kind of hard to hear, but he was asking, he's dressed in drag, has like blue eyeshadow and a ridiculous wig. He's asking anybody in the crowd if they voted for Donald Trump, and he said, don't admit that to us. Well, if you do admit that to us, do we do sacrifices? So he's like suggesting, and then he just outright says it. He goes, did he vote for Trump? And he goes, no. And he goes, okay, if you did, I'll kill him. Like, that's what this drag queen says. So I don't understand what the point of inviting this drag queen was, other than to virtue signal about how much they despise half of the country. But these people, they claim to be inclusive, and that's what really bothers me here, because they're mocking people that they're supposed to be leading into, this ideology that is, hell-bent on inclusivity and diversity. And then, okay, so according to Cathedral of Hope, this is the Facebook page, this is the church, the sermon was intended to, quote, share a message of love, welcome, and inclusion. Okay. However, it's unclear how one does that while also calling to kill Donald Trump supporters and mocking Texas Governor Greg Abbott because he's in a wheelchair. They said, all the money we raised today. So I don't know if they had some sort of weird fundraiser. Commercializing the church, and fundraising, and they're, going to take the funds. This drag queen had suggested they take the funds to remove all of the wheelchair ramps, so that way Governor Greg Abbott, who's in a wheelchair, by the way, can't get in to vote or get into public buildings and do his job. Okay, so this church also claimed that the event was so that the church could bless and affirm those who use drag as an art form and affirm their transgender siblings made in the image of God. Okay, so that's what this church said that the event was all about. So the church could bless and affirm transgender individuals and drag queens who use drag as an art form. The most insane thing about this is to claim that Christians don't accept transgender. We accept all people. Okay, Christians do, but they don't accept the sin. Okay, love the sinner, hate the sin. Okay, and transgenderism is not the truth. Okay, the Bible's very clear. And if you are a church that says that transgenderism is true and that you can be a man, you can be a woman, and that's not reflective of your sex, or you can be the opposite of what your sex indicates, you would have to accept the notion that God makes mistakes. Okay, and we believe in all-powerful, omnipotent God who makes no mistakes and is perfect. Okay, so this church, by accepting transgenderism as a truth, and that you can, in fact, be a woman if you're a man, and you can, in fact, be a man if you are a woman, that is also accepting the notion that God makes mistakes. So while pretending to virtue signal their woke narrative to the masses, they ended up sounding very bigoted, ableist, and it just shows how exclusive they actually are. They're very exclusive. They were making fun of a guy in a wheelchair, folks. Now, I've also got this clip. You can watch it on the stream, and I'll just kind of describe what's going on here. But this is a man who was crawling around on the ground, and he was in a, like, what do you call this? It's like leather. I don't even know what it's called. It's a sexual fetish thing. And he crawls around in this pup mask, okay? It's a puppy mask, like a literal dog mask, but it's leather. And he's crawling around, and he and the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, which I'm sure you've heard of before, this is the same group that, had somebody use the cross as a stripping pole, a stripper pole. But they were honored at this Cathedral of Hope Drag Sunday church service. So I'm going to share this with you. You'll hear them being honored at this Cathedral of Hope church. So take a listen. Here we go.
I'm going to invite our guests, our family, to come and join me for a moment, especially the members of the Lone Star Royal Court, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, and members of the Bears. If you are with us this morning, would you just come and join me up the front? And ask our clergy to come down to the front.
Okay, so all these people come down to the front, and there's this, like, thing. There's this, like, he's in a puppy mask. I don't know what it's called. I think it's like BDSM. I don't know, BDSM. I'd have to look it up, but it's like a sexual fetish thing. So, this is just so gross. I mean, just all kinds of whack jobs being celebrated and honored. According to their website, the mission of Cathedral Hope is to proclaim Christ through faith, hope, and love, because we live in a world where Christianity has been associated with intolerance, exclusion, and hate. Not true. It's unclear why these churches pretend to care about Christianity when their entire existence revolves around justifying sin. Okay, so Jesus died for sin, for your sins, and their entire existence revolves around justifying sin. So there are countless warnings in the Bible to be cautious of these teachings. Actually, at my congregation, we're learning about Revelation and how, the 7 churches, they were condemned. Actually, I think 6 of the 7 churches. I might be wrong about that, but there were several churches who were condemned because of their compromising, because of their corruption. And we shouldn't be shocked by this, because the Bible tells us that the churches will be compromised, the churches will become corrupt. According to 1 John 4:1, it says, "Do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, for many false prophets have gone out into the world." So it couldn't be more clear where this church stands, and it has nothing to do with preaching the word of God. So the only problem with being a leftist is that you can't out-progressive yourself. You're going to keep doing weird things, and you're going to keep trying to out-progressive yourself, and you're going to wind up in a place where you're honoring somebody in a pup mask, like this weird sexual fetish, and somebody crawling on the ground, and you're going to wind up honoring those people in a church, this Cathedral of Hope church. So I've got to take a quick break, but you're listening to Conservative Cat. They're so brainwashed. Yeah, well, and part of it, I think, is here. I'll let you like watch the whole clip here. Here we go. There's children in attendance. Big thing.
I'm going to invite
Here we
our
go.
guests, our family, to come and join me for a moment, especially the members of the Lone Star Royal Court, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, and members of the Bears. If you are with us this morning, would you just come and join me up the front? I'll ask our clergy to come down to the front.
I don't know yet. Okay, that people is just got a big program. And then this guy, this PDF from here, I think it's the PDF from here. Carry on. Here, swim,
Come on in here. Come on.
I mean, the sisters like to put the intelligence are there. And they're added. Like this round of applause.
That's what's so disturbing about this.
I don't know about you, but sometimes as Cathedral of Hope, I think we forget just how queer we are.
And then I guess there's this drag show, which is just insane. So I'm going to read this comment. This is interesting. So, Dan, if your God is perfect, why was Jesus needed? Because we weren't perfect. Okay, that's the whole reason why Jesus came, is because we weren't perfect. God is perfect and sent the only perfect man to ever walk on earth, okay, Jesus, and he sent him as a sacrifice. Because we were imperfect. The wages for death, or the wages for sin, is death. Okay, so he sent an imperfect man, or a perfect man, to save the imperfect people of the world. Okay, so God is perfect. It's just, unfortunately, even you can go back to the original sin, Genesis, Adam and Eve, Eve taking the apple, Adam also partaking in the original sin. Man is imperfect and man has sin. Okay, so that's why Jesus was needed. So God created us to be with him and to not fall victim to sin. Unfortunately, the serpent, Satan, is the ruler of the earth, and Satan got to us in that original sin, the serpent, and convinced us to sin, which is what Satan does, because he wants us to be separated from God. So God was living on earth with Adam and Eve, and unfortunately, after sin, God could no longer live and dwell among the imperfect, okay, because he's a perfect God, and he wasn't going to, dwell among us anymore. So he had to send Jesus so that way we could reconcile that relationship. And that's why Jesus was needed. It's not because God is imperfect, it's because we're imperfect, okay, and recognizing that we're imperfect, and you have to, these people have never opened a Bible. They have been preached to and never taught, false prophets. Yeah. If you were to open up the Bible, you'd know right away. It's very humbling, and that's what is really the sad part about atheism, or about a lack of faith. It's or a lack of the Christian faith. Most other faiths, they don't teach this, that you are an imperfect being, and that you come with sin, and there's sin in the world. Okay, so most people walk about their life thinking that, they are the bee's knees, or they're the best, or, you've got other people walking around saying that they don't have any value. But God, says that we're imperfect, but through Jesus we have value, in that our sins are forgiven, and we can now have a relationship with God. The Holy Spirit came down, and he dwells among us now with the Holy Spirit. So I feel really bad for people because who are atheist, or who lack a Christian faith specifically, because they don't have that principle that, hey, I am a sinner, I am imperfect, and That doesn't mean that you wallow in your sin. It doesn't mean you wallow in your imperfections. But through the blood of Jesus specifically, I am saved and I am worthy of being loved by God. Thank you, Jesus. Right. So to walk around either, and that's why you see, very arrogant people in our world. And every time you meet a Christian, most people, when they meet Christians, they are the nicest people. And there's a reason why, is because they're humbled enough to know that they're imperfect, but they're strong enough to know that they are loved by God and that they have value and worth. So created in God's image. Okay, that's very perfect. He didn't create gods. We were created in his likeness. So we weren't created just like God. We were created in his likeness. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. I so do appreciate you tuning in each and every single morning. Yes, let's get to this article. The last story I did about the Texas church, the drag queen saying he wanted to, perform sacrifices in the church of Trump supporters. And saying that he wanted to remove wheelchair ramps so Governor Greg Abbott couldn't access buildings. Complete ableist bigots, and this is the left. Okay, they're ableist, they're bigots, they're exclusive. This was not very inclusive. They were calling for the actual death of Trump supporters. Okay, so I was talking a little bit about that, and I had mentioned that, it's hard for them to out-liberal themselves, to out-progressive themselves. At some point, you're going to be like, oh, wow, we're really far gone. We've got some guy in a, BDSM gear. I think that's what that's called. I'm sorry. I'm not I'm not well versed in BDSM. Yeah, that's right. I'm not well versed in this kind of stuff. So it's BDSM gear. It's like those leather straps, and he had like a pup mask on, and he was crawling around on the ground, and he was, applauded in the church and recognized in the church and celebrated in the church. Okay, so it's so hard to out-liberal yourself at that point. Like how much more progressive can you get? So this story, the goalpost just constantly keeps changing. The only problem with being a leftist is that you can never be progressive enough, and they'll find a way, folks, to out-progressive themselves in that situation with the pup mask and the BDSM being in the church. They'll move the goalpost constantly, and they'll change it. And what was once seen as a morally superior thing to do, which would be to buy an electric vehicle, a Tesla, okay, suddenly that's the worst thing you could purchase now. And the goalpost always moves. I don't know how you are a leftist. I really don't. Leftists listening, how are you beholden to this leftist ideology? It has got to be exhausting because the goalpost always moves. Conservatives, their social and cultural stances have been the same, okay, day in, day out. How do you live in an ideology and in a belief system where the goalpost is constantly moving? So now it's bad, I guess, to drive around an electric vehicle. Because they're beholden to this leftist orthodoxy. So this is beautiful. I love this story. One rich liberal who bought a Tesla, he had to find this out the hard way, that leftist ideology is constantly moving and it's kind of hard to keep up. Liberals will always go after their own in favor of their leftist orthodoxy, okay? So Timothy Tees is his name. He's a Portland liberal. He was a Kamala Harris voter and a Trump hater. He bought himself a Tesla before Elon Musk made the promise to help make America great again, made the endorsement of Donald Trump. He bought the Tesla before Elon came out he was a former Democrat and came out kind of, I guess, as a Republican. I wouldn't even call Elon Musk a Republican. He's just MAGA. Okay, so However, that doesn't matter when you're dealing with the most illogical group of society, the leftists. So we have insert a masked Antifa member who vandalized his vehicle. This rich guy, his name is Timothy Tees. I'm going to share this with you. This is actually, I think it's a clip here. I want to get to this clip. Hopefully I can get to this clip. I think I found it. Yeah, Timothy Tees. Let me try to find it. I thought I had it. Okay, I don't have it right now, but I will find that clip. But I want to describe what's going on in the clip here before I play the video, and I'll find the video. But there was a Tesla. Okay, he was parked outside, and he had actually on his Tesla a bumper sticker that said, "I bought this before Elon went crazy," bumper sticker. Okay, so he actually had that on his Tesla in hopes of deterring attacks. And despite having that bumper sticker, somebody wrote the word and vandalized an Antifa member, wrote the word Nazi on the hood of the car. Okay, so yeah, that's what happened. I've got to take a quick break, but we're going to come back. I'm going to wrap this story up. I also want to share liberals protesting outside of Elon Musk's Tesla showroom in New York over the weekend. They were chanting things like "Don't buy swastikas." Okay, that's their new chant, "Don't buy swastikas," implying that the vehicles are a Nazi symbol, which is just so ridiculous. Like, come on, folks. Elon Musk isn't a Nazi. What? You're still on this? Like, that was like, I had to been like 3 weeks ago with the whole Elon Musk Nazi salute, which wasn't really a Nazi salute. Okay, that was so like 3 weeks ago. You got to move on. We're going to be right back. And a little bit later, I want to talk about the McLean County State's Attorney and the Illinois State Police rejecting investigating an election interference complaint. So we're going to get to that. Plus that plane crash in Toronto. Of course, CNN is making a pathetic attempt, if I do say so myself, to blame it all on Donald Trump. Be sure to know the facts here, folks. Joe Biden, the left, much like the egg prices, okay? Eggs have been going up and up and up since Joe Biden took office, okay? Now they're up a little bit more because of bird flu. It's unfortunate that we don't have independent family farms, that we all don't have chickens, right? And we wouldn't be dealing with this kind of stuff. But because we do mass farming of animals, we, run the risk of coming down with bird flu and multiple flocks being plagued with this bird flu. Okay, so that's the way society operates now. It's unfortunate. Conservatives actually believe in making your own food, homesteading, and we don't like big food farm. We don't like big food and big pharma. Okay, so it's unfortunate that city people don't want to make their own food. There's no way that they could make their own food. So the leftists, the urbanites, they can't make their own food. So we've had to come up with a way to feed them, and we have to do mass farming. Okay, so it's kind of unfortunate, but that's where we're at. That's the reality of the situation. That's why egg prices are going on, because of the structure systemically. Doesn't really support independent farming, and independent farming would lower the risk of bird flu just outbreaking. Okay, but number one, the eggs, they've been going up since Joe Biden took office. Okay, they've been $7 before under Joe Biden because of inflation, and not the bird flu, by the way. So under his administration, the media was like, hold, don't talk about that story. Don't talk about the egg prices. Okay, now let's talk about it because Donald Trump is president. Same thing with the plane crashes here, folks. Joe Biden in 2024, it might have been his last year, but I think he had like overall 5 deadly plane crashes under his administration, 4 of them taking place within the span of a year. Okay, so under President Donald Trump, I think he's up to 3 within this year, which is insane. I'm not gonna, but that's not his fault. There's something going on with the FAA, and it's not the gutting that's taking place, because guess what? The gutting isn't actually happening. Secretary Duffy, the guy in charge of the FAA, and everybody else in the administration, they have not laid off air traffic controllers. Okay, no air traffic controllers have been laid off. It's likely, and this is what Donald Trump had said, the individuals who are there now, who are placed via the DEI system, under the DEI system, so you were placed there because of your insignificant birth traits, like your skin color or sexual orientation, whatever. You were placed there because you were gay, and it wasn't merit-based. Most likely it's due to the air traffic controllers who are there and currently exist there. They haven't laid off, the Trump administration, any air traffic controllers, despite what the left will tell you. So the FAA has not undergone layoffs when it comes to air traffic controllers. So, and this has been a prevalent problem since the Biden administration. Okay, plane crashes, deadly plane crashes. On top of that, train derailments, they increased under the Biden administration. Okay, so there's something systemically that's wrong there. They've probably got to replace a lot of these air traffic controllers, the Trump administration, which takes a lot of work, okay, because you have to make sure that the people going into those positions have the merit, okay, to do those positions. It's a very tough job. I'm sure not a ton of people are, raising their hand to do that type of job. It's probably very high stress. So they've got to have some time to kind of work this out within their first term here of the Trump administration. So I'm going to be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Don't act like it's a new excuse for Donald Trump. Yeah, it hit in 2022, but prior to 2022, the egg prices were probably up $6-7. Okay, so under the Biden administration, in the first year of Joe Biden, we saw inflation rise, and the bird flu had hit in 2022. Which furthers my point. The bird flu hasn't been under control. Okay. It hasn't been, he didn't get it under control, in 2 years, the Joe Biden administration. So they knew about it in 2022. They haven't done much to combat the bird flu or to remedy that situation. And my whole point with this and bringing up the bird flu and the egg prices is our American media, our mainstream media, they have said, hold off on that story. Okay, now we're going to start highlighting the egg prices and saying it's a problem in the American media. Now, they didn't talk about how this has been a problem for years, okay, for, 2025, for 3 years. They haven't talked about this. But even prior to the bird flu, the egg prices were up at least $5-6, and they were up substantially due to inflation. So on top of the bird flu, you also had massive inflation under Joe Biden, and that's what brought up the egg prices as well. So, and at this point, under Donald Trump's, he's been president for a month. Okay, he hasn't been able to combat bird flu. I guarantee you, within a couple of years, bird flu will be gone. This problem, this outbreak, is going to be remedied and it's going to be fixed. But I mean, as always, we run the risk of bird flu and outbreaks like this with our cattle. Because we do massive farming and big farming, okay? This wouldn't even be going on right now, egg prices or anything like that, if everybody just had their own chickens. Just saying. But unfortunately, we live in a country that has said that it's okay to live urban, it's okay to live in the city, and not be sustainable and not have independence. And we unfortunately had to change up the way we do farming to satisfy the city people, because the city people can't make their own food or they don't want to. So conservatives didn't talk about the bird flu. They only talked about the price. I don't know. I mean, I'll give you that. Sure. I don't think that the bird flu, and unfortunately, when conservatives, if they didn't talk about the bird flu, I mean, it really doesn't matter what the conservatives talked or didn't talk about during Joe Biden's administration. And it still doesn't matter really what conservatives talk about on their journalistic platforms, because they're not nearly the platform that the mainstream media has. Okay. That I will say, your NPRs, your CNN, your MSNBC, your ABCs, your NBCs, all of those mainstream outlets, they have the true dissemination of information power here. So even if conservatives were talking about it, and I'll give you that, I don't think that they were talking about the bird flu as much as they were talking about the price, okay? Which at the end of the day, that's all that really matters is the bird flu, whether it's bird flu or inflation, at the end of the day, all that really matters is the price, okay? And still today, they're not talking about, the leftist media is not talking about how the bird flu is bringing it up. They're talking about how Donald Trump is the reason why the egg prices are up. Okay, so the leftist media, who has the true dissemination power of information, they're not talking about the bird flu either. Okay, in 2025, they've said that it is Donald Trump's fault. They're saying that it's Donald Trump's fault and his economy is bad, and that's why eggs are going up. No. It's always been the bird flu, a combination of inflation and the bird flu under both Biden administration and Trump administration. The only difference is Trump has only been in for a month. Okay, and this wouldn't have happened had not the Biden administration been in control from 2021 to 2024. This probably would have never happened. That prices getting out of control like this and the bird flu. I'm going to be honest with you. Here's what happens. They cut corners when there's regulation. When you over-regulate these corporate farms, which I don't agree with, but when you over-regulate, people wind up cutting corners and they focus on things that they shouldn't be focused on when they should be focused on, keeping their flocks healthy. They're focused on making sure that every chicken has like a range of like 50 feet or something like that, because the green weenies. Okay, so when you place those regulations on farmers, they can't focus on keeping their flocks safe and healthy. They're focused on the government regulation. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. So do appreciate you tuning in each and every single morning. Yes, I wanted to play this clip. This is an interesting one where, you got this leftist. I'm not going to have time to play it right now, but I'll play it at the top of the hour. You got this leftist who went and vandalized this other leftist car. And I think it's hilarious because, the goalpost always moves for the leftist ideology. It used to be cool to have a Tesla when you were a leftist. Okay. It used to be something you wanted and something you had to buy as a leftist, to do your part to combat climate change. Buy yourself a Tesla. Okay. So this masked Antifa member winds up vandalizing the vehicle of one Timothy Tees, who is a wealthy Portland liberal. And this wealthy Portland liberal is big mad because this individual vandalized his car. And, I to this I say, it sucks to be you, man. Maybe you shouldn't be a Democrat. Okay. These are the types of people, they condone vandalism. They're pro-vandalism. It's kind of comical to witness this where the left goes after their own. So we're going to play this clip on the other side. I've got so much to get to this morning. Kathy Hochul also threatening to remove New York Mayor Eric Adams from office for the crime of, get this, working with Donald Trump on deportations and Tom Homan on deportations following federal immigration law. So now she's threatening to undo the will of the people, which is a very serious thing. It's the most undemocratic thing you could possibly do, and install or appoint a mayor for New York, for New York City. So Kathy Hochul threatening to remove the New York mayor. I'm going to be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat. Okay, so this is the Antifa member. You're going to see, camera footage. He had camera footage of this guy who wrote the word Nazi on the hood of his car. We're going to get to that story here shortly after 7 o'clock. I'm going to get to some of your comments. No, the left is asking why the price hasn't come down, and Trump said it would come down right away. We know what's going on because it's the same as under the Biden administration. Trump is the stupid one to talk crap. No. Okay, so let me actually find. I'm going to find. We'll just pull a random NBC article or something, and we're going to look at this and break this down because I promise you, the left is not just asking why the price hasn't come down. They are blaming Donald Trump for the prices not coming down. And Donald Trump never said that prices would come down right away. He said that he'd get the prices down. He never said, timeline like eggs will be, $2 a month into my administration or a month into my term. Okay, never said that. I've checked every single speech, by the way, of Donald Trump's, and he never said any of that. Number one. Number two, the left is blaming Donald Trump, okay, for the prices. Okay, they decided to hold off on this story and talking about it, the bird flu, educating people as to why the prices were coming on, whether that's bird flu, a little bit of inflation under Joe Biden. They didn't educate the people back in 2022 when this all started, and they decided to hold this story until 2025 and blame Donald Trump for the egg prices. So hold on, I'm going to find the article, and we're going to break it down together. Okay, so here we go. This is the article here at NBC. Here we go. The average price for a dozen eggs rose to about $5 last month, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Notable jump from this time last year when household staple was around $3. Okay. As the highly infectious bird flu, so they do mention the bird flu here, okay, disseminates the chicken population among produces the egg supplies nationwide. Prices are expected to climb this year by over 20%, okay. As a result, some of the nation's biggest grocery store chains have started limiting the amount of eggs that consumers can buy, for example, capping the bulk on at 2 60-count cartons per purchase. Trader Joe's, blah, blah, blah. Okay, here's where it gets interesting. The product's high cost has prompted Democrats to demand that President Donald Trump fulfill his campaign promise to immediately start reducing the prices. Okay, eggs are at the center of a political fight. Okay, so the article title here, Trump orders massive firings in grocery store, limits egg supplies. Trump administration, so here we go. The mass firings in probationary begins, affecting potentially 100,000 grocery stores are placing limits on eggs. Customers can purchase. So in a way, what they're doing here is blaming Donald Trump, and they're trying to suggest that he's not fulfilling a campaign promise or immediately filling the campaign promise, which, I mean, folks, it's a month into his administration, okay? A month in. So to even suggest that he's not immediately doing this is just disingenuous because, I mean, what's your definition of immediately? A month? Okay. Number one. Number two, I'd have to check their numbers. I don't know exactly what the egg prices were this time last year, $3. But if you look, the $3 is up substantially from 2020, what egg prices were in 2020. So they're being selective there, NBC, with their statistics. They're saying, oh, they were just $3 last year under the Joe Biden administration. But what they're not telling you is that was up from the $1 probably before in 2020 when Donald Trump was president, okay? Because the bird flu and the inflation started under the Biden administration and wasn't fixed under the Biden administration. Now we're still dealing with it under the Trump administration. So, yeah, totally disingenuous media. I'm back. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and talk Bloomington Normal. So I do appreciate you tuning in each and every single day. Yes, I hate to say this, but you know what? The egg prices, the planes, all of it, the mainstream American media have done you a disservice because they held these stories under the Biden administration. These problems began, they started under the Biden administration, and now they're blaming Donald Trump for these issues, for the egg prices. In 2022 was the outbreak of the bird flu. So Joe Biden didn't get the outbreak under control, not to mention rampant inflation. That's what originally brought up the egg prices. And now it's even worse because we've got 2 years in the making here of bird flu outbreak and of inflation. So now they're up to like $7. Okay, so the Democrats, they're blaming Donald Trump, saying that he's not fulfilling a campaign promise, which means, because he didn't immediately bring down the egg prices. Look, we're a month into this. I don't know what your definition of immediately is. He's kind of focused on the border right now, shutting down the border, closing borders up, and trying to get some sanity restored into this country. And it's unfortunate that the media is being disingenuous, and not only with that, but also the planes. Okay, under Joe Biden's administration, he had more plane crashes in a total year, by the way. I think it was like 4 deadly plane crashes within 1 year. And then you've got Donald Trump, he's got 3 so far under this year. But they're going to blame Donald Trump for this. But it all started under the Biden administration, okay? Number one. Number two, it's just completely disingenuous to start reporting on it now and blame Donald Trump for these issues that have been going on for years under the Biden administration. So I want to play this clip. I said that I'd get to it. This is comical because the left is going after their own here. This is a masked Antifa member, okay? And this guy, whose car was vandalized by the masked Antifa member, was vandalized. Okay, this car was vandalized, and he wrote the word Nazi on the hood. Take a listen to this. Here we go.
The video shows the vandal covering his face, writing something on the hood of a car.
That happened in broad daylight. I mean, he was brazen.
And Tim Tees says the culprit targeted his Tesla, parked in his Northwest Portland driveway on a quiet neighborhood street.
During Super Bowl Sunday, while I was up watching the game, my son and I were watching the football game. I showed you the video. They spray painted my car.
When Tees went to investigate, he discovered the word Nazi written in red. And he thinks there's a connection to Tesla CEO Elon Musk, who's now serving President Trump.
I get that people are upset about Elon. I'm upset about Elon, I bought the car before, Elon went crazy, hence the bumper sticker.
A sticker that'll have to wait, since after cleaning, his Tesla is now in storage.
I'm thinking about selling the Tesla, although I really like the car.
This vandalism, reported to Portland police, follows other incidents, including a suspected arson at a Salem Tesla dealership last month. And in Colorado, a dealership was hit multiple times. Police there said some of the graffiti was offensive and hateful. While back in Portland, Tees has this message for the person responsible.
What I would say to him is hey, look, dude, if you want to protest, I'll go and protest with you. The $255 I spent to clean my car, I could have used to donate to the DNC or, to a number of other organizations that could have done something a little bit more constructive.
Now, while he is considering selling the Tesla, Tease also tells me that he is getting more cameras around his home following this vandalism and a couple break-ins within the last 3 months.
Okay, so there's that. And in other news, right outside Tesla showroom in New York over the weekend, there is a stunning display of protesters, and they were, protesting Trump. And really, Trump's efforts to dismantle our government is what they're saying is to dismantle. Really, he's just pushing for transparency in the government. I thought I saw something yesterday. I'll have to look up the headline. $4.7 trillion, like totally unaccounted for, is what Doge found. 4.7 trillion with the T, folks. Unaccounted for, not traceable. It was a budget line item. They have no idea where it went. $4.7 trillion of your taxpayer dollars, by the way. So this is all about transparency. Don't forget it, folks. It's not about dismantling a government. It is about transparent government. So take a listen to this. This is protesters right outside the showroom in New York.
Buy swastikas. Don't buy swastikas. Don't buy swastikas. Don't buy swastikas.
Okay, don't buy swastikars is what they're chanting, implying that the vehicles are a Nazi symbol. So these are the sort of imbeciles that we're dealing with here, folks. It's painfully ignorant of them. They don't know the true meaning of fascism. Like I said yesterday, fascism is expanding the government and the government employees, okay, and large government. That's fascism. If they truly knew what Nazism stood for, they would likely not be pretending to fight whatever it is they think they're fighting for, okay? If they truly knew what Nazism was, they probably would have been holding these protests under Kamala Harris and the Joe Biden administration, because that's what real Nazism looks like, or fascism, I should say. Nazism is, very specific. It's the annihilation of the Jews. And under more Jews died definitely under the Biden administration than the Trump administration, his first term, okay, and his second term. Okay, so way more Jews died during that. So they would probably be protesting the Biden administration, considering their poor handling of the Hamas terrorists and the attack on October 7th and the hostage negotiations, which Donald Trump had to come in and negotiate all of that and get them home, which he did, by the way, under his first term within the month. Okay, so if they truly knew what Nazism stood for, they would have protested under the Biden administration. Okay, if they truly knew what fascism was, they'd be protesting under the Biden-Harris administration, because they're the ones who expanded the government, hired 87,000 IRS agents to knock on your door and audit you. Okay. I also saw something where right before Pete Hegseth and his nomination and everything, the Biden administration had ordered an audit of Pete Hegseth and his family, which is just so disgusting. They weaponized yet another government agency against their political opponents. But that's true fascism, by the way. So while they dedicate all this time, energy to and to lies to upholding the status quo, they portray themselves to the world as the most naive voters that Democrats rely on. These protesters are the most naive voters that Democrats rely on. Okay, without these people, they would have no voters at all. And there's nothing more pathetic and delusional than this. If you knew what fascism actually was, if you knew what Nazism actually was, you would have been protesting under the Biden administration, not the Trump administration, okay? All right, let's get to a few other stories here. Good morning, 7:13 a.m. It's a cold morning. It's good. My toes are freezing. It's so cold outside. I want to get to the McLean County State's Attorney and the Illinois State Police. They rejected election interference complaints, investigating election interference complaints. So we're going to get to that, plus a plane crash in Toronto. We're going to watch CNN pathetically try to attempt to blame it on Donald Trump. The left is blaming Donald Trump for egg prices. The bird flu outbreak was in 2022 under the Biden administration. It's his fault that he didn't get that under control, much like somebody actually texted and they said under 45 Trump, eggs were 75 or 79 cents. Yeah. So, and then under the Biden administration, they went up. to $3. I think last year they were $3. Now this year in 2025, they're like $7 because the outbreak has gotten worse. It wasn't under control under the Biden administration. The inflation is really bad. But now all of a sudden the mainstream media, they're trying to say that it's Donald Trump's fault, a month of him being in office. And they're saying that he's not fulfilling his campaign promise to immediately address the prices. Number one, what's your definition of immediately? We're a month into this, folks. I'm sure he's going to address it at some point, the outbreak. The way to address this outbreak is probably, and the reason why this outbreak probably happened is because the Biden administration and Democrats, they do this every single time. If you look throughout history, Democrat administrations, you'll see that mass farming winds up having complications because of the government regulation. They're so focused on whether the chickens, are combed with the right brushes, okay, or something crazy like that, or like chickens having, an X amount of space to range, okay? They don't want mass farmers to do what they're hired to do and to feed America. They have to mass farm. They really don't want them to do that because green weenies and animal activists everywhere. So what they do, they place these regulations which wind up actually hurting the chickens even more because there's things that fall through the cracks. So the farmers aren't focused on taking care of their flocks. They're more focused on being in compliance with the government, and they're not able to perform their jobs the way they're supposed to perform their jobs. And that's why under the Biden administration, we saw the outbreak. Okay. And under most Democrat administrations, we see outbreaks of bird flu. We see mass farming of the food industry, all of the food industry. What was it? ADM, Archer Daniels Midland. There was an explosion there. That can also be traced to the green weenie policies of the Joe Biden administration, where they are pushing things like seed oils. They're pushing things like fake meat, and they use a chemical. And a lot of these explosions, these food production facilities, there was tons of them under the Biden administration, and there's a reason why. Processing our food, if they are doing these seed oils, they use hexane, I think is what it's called. It's a chemical, and when you use that, it is very, very dangerous. One, it's terrible for you because it's a degreaser essentially. So in order to make seed oils and in order to make your fake meat, they have to use hexane, okay, to rip the seed oils off of the vegetables, okay? So it's like a degreaser. It's a dangerous chemical, and a lot of these explosions under the Biden administration with our food processing, which is also another reason why food prices went up, is because all of our food production facilities were going up in flames or exploding. Thank you, Joe Biden. So that's green weenie policies. They are destructive. They are anti-human, and they ultimately end lives, these green weenie policies. So, they gave them tax breaks or tax incentives, credits, if they had made and met quotas on the seed oil production and the fake meat production. And ADM, I believe that their head honchos, their top guys, they had said that they were going to work hard to produce this. Under a new program, they were going to work hard to create fake meat and seed oils and all of that under the Biden administration because it was incentivized. They were given money to do this, and it's dangerous work. Okay, so much like the mass production of chickens, there was probably things that they were told to do, regulations placed on them where they weren't focused on the actual act of farming their flocks and taking care of their chickens. They were incentivized to focus more on the green weenie policies. So under the Biden administration, the flu broke out, the bird flu broke out, and it can be traced to poor policy. Okay, these things are preventable. Don't let the left tell you that these things just happen. No, it's totally preventable. And it's bad policy and bad regulation of our farmers that caused the bird flu outbreak. Okay, number one. So we're going to get to that because they're also blaming Donald Trump for the plane crashes. If you look at the numbers, Joe Biden had just as many more, actually, plane crashes. And now all of a sudden the mainstream media is going to blame Donald Trump for it. Not only the egg prices, but the plane crashes. So we're going to be right back with all of that here next. But I do also want to get to the state's attorney, Illinois State Police, rejecting this election interference complaint. Stick around. You're listening to Cities 92.9. Hey, good morning. You're listening to, I have my feet on a heating pad right now. Nice, Lisa. Yeah. My toes are cold. Like, I got socks on, but I'm still like really, really cold. I've got socks and shoes. It's like still freezing though. Like, my toes always get cold around this time of year. You kill millions of chickens because the government tells you to. Yeah. Well, the government also probably told them to kill you're exactly right, Chris. I'd have to look that up. The Biden administration did tell them to kill all the chickens. And you have to rebuild your flock, and it takes a while for chickens to produce. Mine take a year at least before getting any kind of real production. Yeah. Anybody who's farmed chickens before knows it's not easy to get chickens to lay eggs, and to get chickens to lay eggs that are, usable. Okay. Number one. And there's all kinds of, my point is that the government regulation and the government mandates, so the government telling them to kill off their chickens and not treat the chickens, and make that a priority to treat the chickens, and kept telling them to kill them off. That probably, aided in that. But also, there should be, perhaps the way I would probably go about this, most local municipalities, I know here locally, I get my, eggs from a local farmer, right? I can't do it because my municipality actually bans chickens. You can't have chickens in your yard. So, the way to kind of combat this maybe would be to incentivize people to take control over their lives and get their own chickens. Okay. If you, get your baby chicks, okay, and, they obviously don't come down with this bird flu, you can kind of manage their well-being when they're right there in your backyard, and you can make sure that they don't get sick. There should be incentives for that. So, local municipalities, you could handle this locally by incentivizing people to buy their own chickens, by rolling back some of these ordinances that ban people from having chickens in their own yards. Okay. So, conservatives are very, very pro independent individual. We're against mass farming and corporate farming. We're very all about the small farmer. Okay, that's what conservatives are all about. And there's ways to go about this. Okay, and you didn't have to kill off all of the chickens. You could have incentivized individuals to get their own chickens, breed, healthy chickens, and get the chickens at the store and put them in your backyard, right? It might, the cost of feed and things like that might be expensive, but at the end of the day, if you go through, what was it? I don't know how much a bag of chicken feed is. Chicken feed for a month. Okay, it costs you approximately $20. Okay, so if you calculate at the grocery store $7 a dozen, and you go through a dozen every 4 weeks, so 7 times 4, 28. So you're looking at about the same cost, okay, for a bag of feed for your chickens if you have a flock of 6 chickens. Okay, so that's how you combat this, right? It's going to take a while for you to get your chickens up, and until then, maybe find a local farmer who, produces their own chickens, and you get them from them until your chickens are raised and start producing eggs. Okay, so that would be my suggestion as a local municipality. I think that this is a chance for local municipalities to kind of take the reins on this and say, hey, we're going to, roll back this ordinance that banned chickens on your property before. We're going to roll it back because, hey, guess what? We need you, or you need, eggs, and the egg prices, bird flu is on the rise, So that's how I'd go about this. Get your local municipalities to incentivize and to promote your own chickens, okay, and getting them in your backyard. Most municipalities have banned this because they don't want you to take individuality over your life, or to take a accountability over your own life. They want you to rely on the government. Okay, so when we come back, we're going to talk about McLean County State's Attorney and the Illinois State Police denying the request to investigate an election interference complaint. Sorry. Ooh, this coffee is like freezing. Ugh. I mean, it's good. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I drink coffee, I mean, I'll drink it until it's like, ice cold. I'll just drink the whole cup, even if it means I do have a cup that has like a little button on it. It keeps it warm, but this is not one of those cups, unfortunately. So my coffee's cold. My feet are cold. It's a cold day. Let's get to it, okay? Brr. Man, I hate cold days. I absolutely can't stand cold days because my coffee gets cold, my toes get cold, everything is just cold, and it's miserable. Next week, I think it's going to get up into the 50s possibly, so you've got that to look forward to. What you don't have to look forward to is your government agencies taking election interference seriously. So this just in, McLean County State's Attorney and Illinois State Police, they've denied the request to investigate an election interference complaint. Dean Fletcher talked with him. He's an Illinois resident, McLean County resident, taxpayer. He lodged a complaint with the McLean County State's Attorney, Erica Reynolds' office. After several McLean County school districts featured the website april1cent.info, okay, that urged voters to, quote, approve a sales tax referendum on their taxpayer-funded web pages. Okay, so you've got, District 87 site. There were a few other sites. I think it was Leroy. There were a few other school districts in the area that promoted this website. Okay. So Dean Fletcher, and you guys can read this, centersquare.com. It should be posted shortly. But her email, Reynolds, this is what Dean Fletcher had shared with me. Her email, Erica Reynolds, basically can be summarized with two reasons as to why they're currently not going to take on this investigation and look into the school districts using a taxpayer-funded webpage like District 87. I don't know what it's called, district87.org or something like that. We'll just look it up here. I don't even know what their webpage is called. Yeah, .org. Yeah, district87.org. Okay, so this is an infrastructure, much like the school infrastructure, the building you pay for with your tax dollars. It's not just the building, but you also pay for somebody to maintain and operate the District 87 site. I wonder if they took this off. No, they didn't even take it off. This is so hilarious. Okay, so they've actually got it featured on their website. You click on it, and it says April vote 1. Okay, and it doesn't like say vote yes on this logo, but clearly, like when you see it, you know it. Okay, this is clearly like them trying to get you, and they know that they did wrong because they got the websites to change the wording from approve, we're asking voters to approve this sales tax referendum, to we're asking voters to consider a 1% Illinois county schools facility tax, also known as the 1 cent tax. Number one, this is not informational at all. Like this website that's featured on the district87.org page is not informational at all. In fact, I think that it is a lie. They're calling it a 1 cent tax, which is misleading. It is not 1 cent tax. Okay, it's a 1% tax. The 1% tax, if you buy a $5 coffee at Starbucks, it's going to cost you 5 cents. So that's more than 1 cent. Okay. If you buy a laptop at Best Buy for $500, it's going to cost you $5. It's clearly more than 1 cent, but they are misleading you and trying to make you think that it is only 1 cent tax, like a 1 cent tax. It's 1 cent on every dollar, but they refuse to, disclose that information, and they're being deceptive on purpose. Okay. So, election interference. Yes. So, according to her email, Erica Reynolds, it can be summed up into two reasons as to why they're not taking on this investigation. First, more or less, funding limitations. So, McLean County Board doesn't have the budget, or they can't budget this out to where they can do a special investigator and allocate specific money for a special investigator to look into the wrongdoing here of the school districts in the alleged election interference. Okay, that that's election. You're taking taxpayer dollars and you're advocating for a specific referendum, and you're pushing voters to approve a specific or to go one way on this referendum, one specific way on this referendum. And that's against the election code. Okay, there's a specific line in the election code where it says that's wrong. You can't use public funds to advocate for either a political candidate or a referendum, one way or another. Okay, yes or no. It's similar to, so if you were to go to the District 87 site, say, back in 2024, say District 87 was pro-Trump, say their superintendent was MAGA all the way. Okay, it would be the same thing if they put like Donald Trump's campaign webpage up there and said, Donald Trump is going to make America great again. He's going to cut taxes. He's going to do all of this. Okay, it would be the same exact thing if District87.org put that on their webpage. Clearly, that's wrong. Okay, you can't do that. Or Kamala Harris, if they had put something up there about Kamala Harris and how she, was going to make or was going to fix America or not go back. I don't know, whatever campaign slogan. I don't even think Kamala Harris had a campaign slogan, to be honest with you. I think it was just mainly like, I'm middle class, okay? If they put information on there about Kamala Harris, being middle class and how she's just like you, and we're asking you to approve Kamala Harris for president in 2024, it'd be the same exact thing, okay? That's election interference. They're using government dollars to advocate for either a political candidate or a referendum. Okay, in this case, it's a referendum. So the other, that was the first one in her email. They laid out, funding limitations that the McLean County Board can't swing it because apparently they don't tax you enough, I guess. Okay, to be able to, I don't know, find the money to preserve democracy. Okay, so the second part was this citing of case law. Now, this is the People versus Ringland. Now, I don't want to get down too much into the weeds. So essentially, in 2017, the Illinois Supreme Court ruled that the state's attorney's investigative powers are restricted, as their role is to primarily assist law enforcement, rather conduct independent investigations. This is what Fletcher says, and I tend to agree with Fletcher here, where he says, who cares which government law enforcement agency is out there conducting the investigation? I don't care if it's actual police on the ground or if it's the state's attorney's office conducting the investigation. I just want people to enforce the law that is on the books, okay? I really don't care who does the investigating. I just want them to enforce the law and to do the actual investigating, okay? So Fletcher, he says this, quote, people really misunderstand law enforcement's role in this country, and there are a lot of legal outs they can take to avoid actually enforcing the law, which I think we've seen nationally and at a state level, and unfortunately, this is a local example. So there's lots of legal outs where they don't have to investigate because they can cite things like this 2017 case law the Illinois Supreme Court ruled on. I think that's just a kind of silly ruling, if you want my opinion about it, in 2017, where they said that the state's attorney's role is restricted. I mean, at the end of the day, I really don't care who investigates it. And if that's the case, like, what's stopping you from, saying, hey, law enforcement, would you take this complaint? Which she does. Erica Reynolds refers Fletcher to the Illinois State Police and to the local police to launch a complaint there and to start out there. Now, in her email to Fletcher, this is what Reynolds said, quote, "It would be imprudent of my office to open an investigation into the matter you emailed me about or potentially any other matter unless we were certain no other investigatory agency could adequately handle these issues involved." So she suggested Fletcher take his complaint to the ISP. Okay, now here is where you get the ring around, okay? Fletcher is told to go to the state's attorney's office by the Illinois State Board of Education. They said, this is criminal code. We can't do this. So you go to the state's attorney's office. You go to the state's attorney's office. Then the state's attorney says, well, take your complaint to the ISP, okay, or take it to the public integrity unit of the Attorney General's office, okay? Now, the State Board of Elections website says complaints alleging criminal violations, which this would be if this is actually what happened, a criminal violation, such as voter fraud, voter intimidation, election interference, etc., should be referred to the state's attorney's office of the county in which the alleged violation occurs. So the State Board of Elections, you would think that they would know about the 2017 case, the Illinois Supreme Court ruling that said that the state's attorney's investigative powers are restrictive. And I bet they do know that, and they are purposely trying to redirect you to an agency that can't or can back out of or take a legal out of investigating. Okay, so it's all by design to be confusing. So they say, on their website, which take it to the state's attorney's office in the county in which this alleged violation occurs, as the State Board of Election lacks jurisdiction to commence criminal prosecution. Okay. So you take it to the state's attorney's office. They say take it to the ISP. Well, get this. He took it to the ISP. Okay. He took it to the ISP, and guess what the ISP said? So the ISP said that they were only able to investigate allegations of a criminal nature. Okay, so they didn't even really read, I don't believe, Dean Fletcher's complaint here. They didn't take it seriously because they can only investigate of a criminal nature, and that's what he's alleging, that this was a criminal code or election code that has criminal ramifications. So it's a Class B misdemeanor if you violate this specific line of election code. And they can only go after elected and appointed officials. So the use of public social media is what they had said to Fletcher in an email for election issues should be referred to the Illinois State Board of Elections or the Attorney General's office, which we're not talking about social media here. We're talking about their publicly funded web pages, district87.org. Somebody is paid to maintain that site. This is infrastructure that is paid for via the taxpayer dollar. Okay. So we're not really talking about their social media. So it sounds like they didn't even really read Fletcher's complaint. Now the election code, which defines the election interference, is punishable by a Class B misdemeanor, which hence is a criminal nature, criminal type of violation. Okay, it's a crime. Okay, so this is what he was alleging took place, and they didn't even really read it, I don't think. So second, they said that they can only investigate criminal violations into elected and appointed officials. Superintendents, whoever, is the end all, so whether that be superintendents or the school board, whoever, makes the decision to put this kind of information on their websites, they should be held accountable, okay? They should do an investigation, figure out which superintendents, which I'd imagine that at the end of the day, the superintendents, they're the ones who have the ultimate say over what goes on the website, or, they should be held accountable for what goes on in their district. Okay, we're talking about superintendents who allowed this to stay on their infrastructure, their website infrastructure. And here's what Dean Fletcher says. He says, in my complaint, I specifically listed the superintendents of the 6 schools which had linked to the website that was promoting and urging voters to vote yes. Did they even read my complaint? I don't think so. I don't think they read the complaint because it doesn't really make sense, their response to the ISP. But ultimately, the ISP denied investigating claims of election interference. So Fletcher said the website promoting the referendum is obviously controlled by the area school districts because after lodging his complaint with the regional superintendent, changes were made to the April 1 cent.info webpage or website. So obviously, even if it is a third party that operates this third party website, April 1 cent.info, the school districts have proven that they have the ability to, say what goes on this third-party website. So this whole cop-out thing of like, oh, it's a third-party website, I'm like free from accountability or consequences, it's not going to fly. Okay, you're the guy who hired the third-party website. You actually have control over what this third-party website says. You've demonstrated that because you made edits to legalize yourselves, essentially. Changing the wording from approve this referendum, we're asking voters to approve this referendum, to asking voters to consider this referendum. Okay, so you've proven that you have control over these websites, and you chose to put these websites on your taxpayer-funded web pages, and that's wrong. And there should be consequences to that. And it's unfortunate that we live in a state where everybody just kind of passed the buck and nobody actually wants to stand up against election interference. And that's really sad because men and women have died for democratic process, for our elections. to have integrity. People have died to preserve America. We're one of the only countries in the world who have an election system as great as the one we have in America. Okay, in China, yeah, there's really no election. Okay, you get one guy and he's going to force you to vote for him. Okay, here in America, we pride ourselves on the democratic process of our elections. And it's unfortunate that, your government agencies really don't give a damn. So here we go. Let's talk about this. I got to take a quick break, but we're going to talk about Trump and Doge and this plane crash. It actually happened in Canada, Toronto, and it was at the, control of Canadian officials. Okay, but they're still going to blame Donald Trump, CNN, for this plane crash, despite it being Canadian officials' fault. Ultimately, I'll be right back with that story. Yeah. Well, people wonder why ice coffee. Yes, people wonder why this state, in this state, wonder why crime continues. Yeah, it's because nobody really wants to do any kind of enforcement. Everything just gets passed off. And what I think that a lot of people think about election interference. Oops, hold on. I just clicked a button. Okay, we're good. What a lot of people think about election interference and election code and the violations to election code, a lot of people just think it's a victimless crime. But like I said, it's not. And if these leftists and Democrats are so concerned about preserving democracy and not repeating things like January 6th, you would think that they would take priority or that election integrity would take priority and that they would do everything to enforce the law that's on the book that preserves our elections. Okay. When you don't investigate these things, when you don't take these claims seriously or these complaints seriously, it just gets worse and worse and worse. And then more and more people don't believe in our elections. And you wind up with things like January 6th, where you could wind up with things like January 6th, which is really unfortunate. Nobody wants something like January 6th to happen, where you have hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of people who believe that the election was stolen. And can you blame them? Okay, when you have things like this and when your government agencies refuse to prosecute these things or refuse to acknowledge that these are really, really serious accusations or really, really serious crimes that could have been committed, and when you don't investigate them, like, what do you want the people to do? We the people are going to start to get really peeved off. We're going to start to realize that our elections are a big old scam if they're in this. The thing of it is, it doesn't just happen in McLean County, okay? It happened in Champaign County. I think it was like over $67,000 they paid the government. So using your taxpayer dollars in Champaign County, there was another resident who went through the same exact thing that Dean Fletcher was going through, okay, in Champaign County, where you've got thousands upon thousands of dollars, taxpayer dollars allocated to billboards advocating for the passage of the referendum, the sales tax hike. Okay, there was a sales tax hike that they wanted. They claimed that it was going to go to public safety. And much like, the website here, the April 1 cent, April1cent.info website, much like that website, the billboards were misleading as well. Okay, they couldn't definitively say that, yes, it's going to go to veterans programs. Okay, that the 1% sales tax hike was going to go to veterans programs. They couldn't definitively say that, much like, on the April1cent.info site, they say that it's going to go to property tax relief, that if we raise taxes here, you won't have to pay more in property taxes, which is just an outright lie. Okay, so this isn't information. This is a lie. This is fake. Okay, this is actually fake information. And they're telling you that they won't raise your property taxes if this passes, which is just ridiculous because they can't promise that. Okay, it's up to the McLean County Board to raise the property tax levy every single year. And the unfortunate thing is that in McLean County specifically, they don't even really have limitations placed on them to, say, hey, you can't raise it past this threshold. Okay, they're going to raise it as much as they want. Not to mention, and I've talked about this before, the grocery sales tax that's going up in your local district. You're going to be paying that again in 2026. If they knew what's good for them, okay, because the state grocery tax was eliminated and they have to make up for that revenue somehow. So they've got to implement their own local grocery tax. Thank you, Governor J.B. Pritzker, for your stupid policy. So they're going to raise that. They're going to raise the local sales tax by 1% because that's also part of the negotiations with the elimination of the state grocery tax. So at the end of the day, you're taxed into oblivion and you are the loser in all of this. We are going to get to CNN. I'm going to get to this here, where they, are saying that it's Donald Trump's fault because of the plane going down, which is just so stupid. Go ahead, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel today. Chuck Schumer, the top Democrat. That's really sad when you know that. That's how you know you've really lost as the Democrat Party, when you're saying that Chuck Schumer is your top Democrat. Like, that's who you have. Chuck Schumer has granny sweaters on most of the time, and he can't lift his arms like past his head, right? And he's got these granny glasses. Like, that's your top guy in the party. Great. Also might get to Kathy Hochul here. Kathy Hochul is fixing to remove the New York City Mayor Eric Adams. She's suggesting that the New York City Mayor Eric Adams had actually done like a quid pro quo, which I don't even know if you could call it a quid pro quo, as part of the negotiations. And I don't think that this happened. These are allegations. There was no proof whatsoever that this happened. He was facing federal indictments, Eric Adams for something completely separate. I think it was like, I don't know what he was facing him for. I think it was like some sort of sex-related charges or something like that. Corruption charges. That's what it was. They've been after Eric Adams because now all of a sudden he's like acting like a Republican, which, whatever. But in exchange for, dismissing his corruption charges, they, worked out a deal where he would help federal immigration authorities. Don't know if that's true. And I don't know if you could really call that quid pro quo. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9, the news and Doc Bloomington Normal. Yes, they're blaming Donald Trump for this plane crash that happened in Canada. And by they, I mean, of course, CNN. Take a listen to this clip here.
Against the backdrop of massive cuts across the federal government, including at the FAA. Just going to put some up on the screen. Hundreds of FAA employees have been laid off as part of Elon Musk going through all the federal agencies. And then beyond the FAA, we have 10% of the CDC workforce, 3,400 at the U.S. Forest Service, 2,200 at the Interior Department, 2,000 at the Department of Energy, 1,000 at the VA.
Yeah, listen, and so far, at least if you kind of look at how Americans, Trump voters in particular, are reacting, so far, this is something that they haven't really been affected by. You do hear from some GOP senators who are in some of these states where they're, public parks, for instance, raising some alarms. But so far, these cuts, because they are directed at federal workers who the right has been expert at demonizing as lazy, as working from home, as costing too much, because they've been demonized, a lot of Americans say, too bad, so sad that they're being axed. We'll see how long that lasts. We'll see if there is any trickle-down effect for average Americans.
I just want to read what Chuck Schumer, the top Democrat in the Senate, said. I'm thankful that everyone in the flight incident in Toronto that took off from Minneapolis is safe, but we keep seeing these incidents day after day. Meanwhile, Trump's doing massive layoffs at the FAA, including safety specialists, and making our skies less and less safe.
Okay, so there's that. Real sad that Chuck Schumer is their top Democrat, by the way. Chuck Schumer has granny glasses and doesn't know how to cook burgers, okay, on the grill. And it's kind of sad that he's your top guy there, Dems. But firstly, we don't know what happened in Canada. The investigation is not complete yet. And, but that's not going to stop the left from ignoring the fact that this happened in Canadian airspace with Canadian officials in control, by the way, okay? Whatever happened, it's kind of the fault of the Canadian officials, okay? Number one. Number two, they turned a blind eye to the Biden administration. And the Biden administration, they mocked aviation safety, okay? And they glorified hiring people based on insignificant birth rates and their sexual orientation, okay? They glorified people because of their insignificant birth rates and their sexual orientation, and they hired those people, and that had nothing to do with merit at all. So that was mocking aviation safety. So they never talked about that under the Biden administration. Like I said, if you look at the numbers, the Biden administration, I think it was within his last year or maybe in 2021. I've got to look up that number, but he had like 4 deadly plane crashes during his administration. I think it was 5 in total, but under in 1 year's time span, it was like 4 crashes. So under Donald Trump's first term, I think he's had 3 so far already. But it's the same thing with the eggs. Don't talk about the egg story. Don't talk about the egg story. Okay, let's talk about the egg story now. Now, this became a problem under the Biden administration, and he never fixed it. Probably became a problem because they were so focused on not hiring via the merit-based, okay? So CNN would love for you to just believe that this has everything to do with Donald Trump and Doge, but that couldn't be further from the truth. It's a disingenuous lie, okay? This is nothing more than them bashing people who are pro-government transparency and efficiency. Yes, I could give a damn if we're laying off public workers, because guess what? Public workers are lazy and they don't do anything. They work from home. They're not like you and me who work at the private sector, okay? So yeah, a lot of them are like that, okay? And that's not demonizing them either, okay? That's just telling you the facts, okay? So this woman on CNN where she's like, that's demonizing them. Give me a break. Also, a lot of people don't know this. According to Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, love her, she says that no air traffic controllers have been let go by Secretary Duffy. So no air traffic controllers have been let go, which is the whole, their whole thing. They've said nobody's been let go. Okay. So they're lying when they tell you that they're gutting the FFA or FAA of air traffic controllers. That's not true. The left, they get upset when the facts don't go with their made up narrative, and they'd rather blame Elon Musk for everything, and they're going to omit the fact that this had everything to do with the Canadian air traffic controllers, which Donald Trump has no control over. Take a listen to this. Here we go.
Or if it was weather, if it was pilot error, if it was something else, and you get the minority leader in the Senate immediately pointing fingers at the president. Your response?
It's incredibly irresponsible for Chuck Schumer to say such a thing when the investigation is still underway. And as you rightfully pointed out, John, this crash unfortunately took place in Canadian airspace with Canadian air traffic controllers overseeing it. And the facts about the FAA are that no air traffic controllers have been let go by Secretary Duffy or this new administration. In fact, Secretary Duffy has put great emphasis on hiring the best and the brightest air traffic controllers who want to be part of the FAA, and President Trump signed a very strong executive order to ensure that the FAA and all federal government agencies are focused on merit and skill-based hiring. We want the best and the brightest, the most competent individuals in positions, especially of public safety at the FAA, the Department of Transportation, and all departments across this federal government, so we can best serve the American people. So while Secretary Buttigieg and the Biden administration sat on their hands when it came to aviation safety for 4 years, this administration is taking it seriously and is actively recruiting the best and the brightest to join this very important field.
Actively recruiting. Okay, so it's going to be hard to try to find probably merit-based people. I'd imagine that a ton of people are raising their hands like, yes, I want to be an air traffic controller, but there's a shortage like everything else. Because it's a stressful job. It's probably not easy to find a ton of air traffic controllers. But look, I don't recall Chuck Schumer blaming Joe Biden for his FFA or FAA accidents, okay? And like I said, there were plenty of them under his administration. That's kind of where this increase started, was under the Biden administration. Here he is. He believes that Trump had everything to do with this. This was actually a Canadian Air accident. The Canadian officials were supposed to be in charge of this. They're demonizing. They're doing everything they can to demonize government transparency. They're saying that we're demonizing public sector workers. That's not true. The facts are the facts. Okay, if you are getting paid to do a job that nobody asked you to do or nobody wants you to do, then why are you there? Okay, so I'm going to be right back. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9. Duckworth Durbin, haha. Yeah, they aren't the top Democrats. They would want to be the top Democrats, but they're not. Chuck Schumer is also not the top Democrat in my opinion. I don't honestly, I have no idea. And that's the crazy thing about the Democrats at this point. I don't think that they really have a bench. Like, who is the Democrat, right? I don't think that they really have one, which is kind of embarrassing. So Duckworth Durbin, not the top Democrats. And then you've got, of course, Chuck Schumer. I don't think that they're the top Democrats. Like I said, they're kind of part of the establishment. Tammy Duckworth, Durbin, Chuck Schumer, they're all part of the establishment Democrats, which I think are being phased out by the globalists. I would say that, there's a lot of infighting probably going on that we don't see with the Democrat Party, with the globalist communists like AOC. And you counter that with like the Clinton or the Obama-esque politician or the Schumer-esque politician, Duckworth, where they're like, you scratch my back, I scratch your back type of Democrats. And that's how they've always done their corruption. Now you've got this whole faction within the Democrat Party where they want to sell out America to our foreign interests. Okay, so that is a whole other faction of the Democrat Party. So there is no clear leader in the Democrat Party. It's definitely not Chuck Schumer, because I do think that this faction within the Democrat Party that seeks to globalize and socialism, communism, I think that is the rising star within the Democrat Party. And I think there's a lot of pushback because there's a lot of money to be made there. Okay, because our foreign adversaries, they're going to pay big bucks, okay, for America and to take over America. And there's a lot of money to be made. However, there's no power in that, because who are you yielding the power to in exchange for the dollars? You're giving it to, communist China. You're giving it to our foreign adversaries. This whole green weenie movement actually benefits, they claim to hate Russia. But actually they're the biggest purveyors of making Russia like a force to not be reckoned with, because they implement things like the green weenie agenda. The green weenie agenda essentially makes it to where Russia is the only one who can provide meaningful energy. So pushing things that don't work, like windmills and solar panels and things like that, you're compromising our energy domestically, but you're also compromising, Germany, for example, UK, they're pushing this at the same time. Everybody's looking for their energy, and they're looking for it at the same place, Russia, which has made them a force not to be reckoned with, and a force that we absolutely rely on. Okay, China, a force that we rely on. And there's no power in that. It's all about the money to those Democrats. And I think that Democrats like Chuck Schumer, Dick Durbin, Tammy Duckworth even, they don't want to lose power. Okay. Now these people, they get the money as a nice bonus, right? You scratch my back, I scratch your back, and you contribute to my campaign. Your classic politician corruption. But they don't want to give up the power, okay? Because that means you have these relationships, you have power over people, you have dirt on people, and they want to continue operating that kind of way within that sort of sphere of corruption. So, yeah, I don't know who the top Democrat is in the Democrat Party anymore. It seems very chaotic. It seems like they have two different ideologies or different ways about going about government, which they're both bad, by the way. Hey, good morning. You're listening to Conservative Cat on Cities 92.9 The News and Talk Bloomington Normal. Like I said, there is absolutely zero correlation between Trump's second term and any of these recent plane crashes. There is no correlation at all. However, Democrats, they will never let a good accident go to waste, and they will politicize this, and they will call on the politicization of this horrible accident. And it's a disgrace, okay? And that's an understatement to call this a disgrace. I mean, the politicization of this. And just do me a favor. Later today, look up how many deadly plane crashes under Trump or under Biden's FAA. you can look at that and then you tell me, that this is a problem under Donald Trump. Like, give me a break. All right, I'm going to be right. Actually, I'm going to go. Gotta go. I can't believe the show's over. Tomorrow morning, I might get to the Kathy Hochul thing because I think that's kind of important. She's, upending really democracy, our democratic process. She wants to remove the New York City mayor, Eric Adams, from office because he is working with immigration enforcement officials. So she wants to remove him, I guess. So yeah, this is absolutely wild. We're going to maybe get to that tomorrow if I remember, but you guys can go ahead, find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. We'll be back tomorrow morning, bright and early, 6 a.m. Bye-bye. Love you.